Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a little bit of a book chat more than a book review for the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Obviously, from looking at my bookshelves, this is way outside my normal wheelhouse here. I typically read mostly fantasy, occasional historical fiction, but at the time that I have read this and am reviewing it currently, it is the beginning of 2021, and last year I had, like a lot of people, quite the year. I would say my year happened to have been even crazier than I would say the average person's was. And so I have pretty much lost all sense of a routine. I have nothing anchoring me to any sense of normalcy when it comes to day-to-day life. My work has completely shifted. And I have one thing I want to do this year, being reading more nonfiction. And I thought, might as well combine reading more nonfiction with finding ways to implement productive habits and help me get back into a routine. So I picked up this book. That's kind of what it's all about. It says Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. And I thought maybe some of the information could be helpful to all of you as well. And I would give my thoughts as to what I think I found to be the biggest takeaways and things that might stand out to all of you that maybe my own personal experiences were not as notable. So the idea with this book is it's not trying to tell you which habits to have, but rather how to build habits that are going to help you rather than hinder you. There's no such thing as a bad or a good habit. There are just habits that can have bad or good results, depending on what you're looking for yourself. And he details a lot of different examples throughout the book. He has a lot of research that goes into what he's talking about, and he's not necessarily taking new concepts. He's talking about a lot of things that a lot of us have seen, but he talks about how the emotional sides of being a human affect our ability to follow through with habits, why we end up often not being able to reach our goals. And so the biggest thing for me that I took away from this is he talks about something where just the first step toward the thing that you want to do is the thing that you should actually be focusing on more than the end result. And I think that is where we fall short a lot of times when we're setting goals. At least for myself, I like setting big goals because I find for me, when I set a big goal, even if I don't reach that goal, trying to get to that still results in me accomplishing a lot. And so that's kind of how I've always looked at it. But what he does here is he talks about usually the first thing that you do is the habit you need to build consistently. So for example, if you want to exercise more, then the first step for most people is they're going to change into their workout clothes. So he talks about, and this is one example, this isn't the whole book, but this is the part that stood out to me that I'm going to be trying to implement a lot more of, which is just trying that first step. So if it is something like exercise, that first step of putting on your workout clothes, once you get to that point, chances are you're also going to follow through with the next point, which maybe that is then getting out your yoga mat if you're exercising at home, or if you have somewhere you can go, if you have a workout room. A lot of times if you put your shoes on, you tie your shoes, you're in your clothes, that's the first step to getting you toward that next thing. And that's the thing that I need to be better about. I have these big goals, and I think I'm very good at planning, but I think I'm not so good at taking it into the tiny steps. He also has a big emphasis on your environment being something that can play a huge role in how well you're going to execute whatever thing it is that you are setting out to do, and how often you hear, to use another example that has to do with, health and wellness and that sort of thing. If you have a goal to eat more, let's say you want to eat more fruits and vegetables, but you happen to have a lot of candy around the house, or your fruits and vegetables are kind of at the back of the fridge where they're not easily accessible, then you're probably setting yourself up for failure. Whereas if it's just right in front of your face, maybe you put it in a bowl, it's right on your kitchen counter or right on your table, you're probably going to do a better job of actually executing that thing that you want because it's right there in front of you. And if you don't even have certain things around you that are going to affect you negatively as far as what your goals are, then you're gonna set yourself up for success. Get rid of those things that you don't really want in your space. And this is a thing that I think a lot of us are aware of. That's the thing, is there's a lot of elements to this book that I think a lot of us are aware of, especially if you're somebody who frequently is aiming to improve your productivity. A lot of the things mentioned here I have seen before. I also have a background in music education, and a lot of the things in this book talk about how we want immediate results. And a lot of times we give up on our goals because we're not seeing those things right away. And we know that if we do certain things now, it'll help us in the future. But we often end up catering to our immediate self rather than our future self. Our present self ends up winning a lot of the times. And this is something where my background, having learned to play an instrument at an advanced level, which would be violin for those that don't know, and going to school for music education, having had to do that, I absolutely know what it's like to start at something and be horrendous at it and sound awful, and then get to a point where I'm not only being paid to play, but paid to teach other people how to play. It takes years and years and years and years and years. And it's not just a matter of, oh, I'm not so good at this, but I'll get better. It's having people hear you sound really bad and just that constant struggle of feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to play this piece. I'm never going to sound like Joshua Bell or Hilary Hahn. Those sorts of feelings, you kind of have to take control of that and recognize the little steps. So I always have been able to see, okay, what I'm doing now is going to eventually pay off. I think I'm pretty good at that, but that's something a lot of people struggle with. And that's something that the book details a lot. One little chart, I guess you could say, that he provides for you to make it as clear as possible. He talks about you have your subconscious and unconscious, or you have your active thoughts versus your thoughts that are not really things that you literally think through. So he gives an example of walking into a dark room and turning on a light switch. So he has it broken up into cue, craving, response, reward. The cue, if you walk into a dark room, is that it is dark and you want to be able to see better. And then the craving, that is the I want to be able to see clearly. So your response is you hit the light switch. The reward is now you can see. And it all sounds like it's broken down almost to a ridiculous minimal amount. But the idea is that action that you've developed, you don't think through it. You just kind of walk in and you immediately hit a light switch when you walk into a room. And you want to be able to make as many of your actions the kinds of things that you don't think about, so that you can focus on things that require more of your attention. And those are the sorts of things that I think I am familiar with and that I do have more experience with. While I don't think a lot of this book was really earth-shattering for me, I also think that's because I have a background in something that requires so many years in executing before it even is somewhat going to pay off in any way, and before you start to see really tremendous results. I have a background that kind of forces me to be examining how to get better at something, and I crave that. I always am looking for how can I apply that same thing to my regular life. And I do think that this book had a few things in it that were helpful to me, but I think it's going to be much more impactful. And hopefully that doesn't sound conceited, like, I'm already familiar with all of this. I don't mean it like that. I just mean not everybody has the same kind of background. It starts quite basic and really starts you at step one, but then really develops into something I think that is much more, you can apply it, you can execute it, it shows you how to take action. I do want to mention really quick, I know a lot of people like listening to nonfiction books, especially ones like these that are supposed to help you in some way, self-help books sort of thing. And the audiobook for this I enjoyed, but also going back and forth between the audiobook and the physical copy, he has often charts, if you will, or images that are showing you things that he's talking about. And in the audiobook, he'll say, you can find an example of this on atomichabits.com, things like that. At first I was like, is this like a giant pitch for us to go to his website? But then I was like, wait a second, are there actual things in the book? Because I started it on audiobook, and then when I went to the physical, I saw that. So I just kind of want to give a heads up. I think that they are trying to help those who don't have a physical copy. If you want some kind of physical resource to print out, or if you need something visually to see to help you understand the concepts that he is saying or see more examples of them. I just thought that was worth noting, because I definitely at first I was a little confused at the constant references that you can go to his website. One thing I wish the book had gone into a little bit more, it does account for the fact that everybody has different personalities and different strengths, and also perhaps different weaknesses as well. And so you have to try and work with what you have. And I wished a little bit that we had gotten more examples of how your personality type is going to affect your ability to build certain habits, or why maybe your personality type might, for example, they have the almost punishment system, accountability partner type of thing, where if I don't do this thing, then I will have this person not let me do this thing. That sort of setup. And I find that certain personality types might not do well with that, or a rewards system where if I do this, I get to treat myself to this. I think certain personalities also, that's not going to work very well for. And I'm not an expert. He definitely, like I said, mentions that you're going to have certain personality types have different things work for you better than others, but we don't really detail that as much. And I like getting into the nitty-gritty. My favorite parts of this book were when they were talking about different studies that were done, different, if you want to say, experiments that were done. I always really like those kinds of things because I like seeing how we came to discover this habit being a certain way, or why the human brain functions the way it does. I like seeing those sorts of things, so I definitely would have liked diving a little bit deeper. Like I said, this video is being filmed and I had read this book right at the beginning of 2021, so I will have a goals video coming up, and I'm going to be talking about how I'm going to try to use some of these practices in my own goal setting. And also, if you all are familiar with the channel World Hoppers, it's a collaborative channel that all the AdSense revenue goes toward charity. We're actually talking about setting reading goals specifically. So if you want to see that video, it'll be up later today, the day that this is being filmed. But if you have read this book, let me know what your biggest takeaway is from it, and what is in general one goal that you have for yourself, whether it be weekly, daily, sometime this year. I would love to see what your goals are. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.